Welcome back to Timeless Messages from the I Ching. This is Stephen. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're doing well. So the question I asked for this particular video is, how can viewers let their lives be easier? How can viewers let their lives be easier? And the two hexagrams that came up were number 2, the receptive, and number 27, corners of the mouth providing nourishment. So without further ado, if you'd like to take a few deep breaths and close your eyes and relax, I'll begin the translation. The receptive. This hexagram is made up of broken lines only. The broken line represents the dark, yielding, receptive primal power of yin, or feminine. The attribute of the hexagram is devotion, and its image is the earth. The receptive is the perfect complement of the creative. The complement, not the opposite. For the receptive does not combat the creative, but completes it. The receptive represents nature in contrast to spirit, earth in contrast to heaven, space in contrast to time, and the female maternal in contrast to the male paternal. And as applied to human affairs, the principle of this complementary relationship between feminine and masculine is found not only in the relation between man and woman, but also between prince and minister, between father and son. And even in the individual, this duality appears in the coexistence of the spirit world and the world of the senses. Yet strictly speaking, there is no real dualism here, because there is a clearly defined relationship between the two principles. In itself, of course, the receptive is just as important as the creative. But the attribute of devotion defines the place occupied by this primal power in relation to the creative. For the receptive must be activated and led by the creative. Then it is productive of good. Only when the receptive abandons this position and tries to stand as an equal side by side with the creative does it become evil. The result then is opposition to and struggle against the creative, which is productive of evil to both. The judgment the receptive brings about sublime success, furthering through the perseverance of a mare. If a superior man undertakes something and tries to lead, he goes astray, but if he follows, he finds guidance. It is favorable to find friends in the west and the south, and to forego friends in the east and the north. Quiet perseverance brings good fortune. The 4 fundamental aspects of the creative, sublime success, furthering through perseverance, are also attributed to the receptive. Here, however, the perseverance is more closely defined. The perseverance is that of a mare. The receptive means spatial reality in contrast to spiritual potential. The potential becomes real, and the spiritual becomes spatial. Thus, the qualification of a mare is here added to the idea of perseverance. The horse belongs to earth, just as the dragon belongs to heaven. Its tireless roaming over the plains is taken as a symbol of the vast expanse of the earth. This is a symbol chosen because the mare combines the strength and swiftness of a horse with the gentleness and devotion of a cow. Only because nature in its many forms corresponds with the many impulses of the creative can it make these impulses real. Nature's richness lies in its power to nourish all living things. Nature's greatness lies in its power to give them beauty and splendor. Thus, it prospers all that lives. It is the creative that begets things, but they are brought to birth by the receptive, the feminine. Applied to human affairs, therefore, what the hexagram indicates is action in accordance with the situation. The person in question is not in an independent position, but is acting as an assistant. We're referring to the receptive as the assistant. This means that this person must achieve something. It is not their task to try to lead. That would only make them lose the way. But it is their task to let themselves be led. If a person knows how to meet fate with an attitude of acceptance, they are sure to find the right guidance. And the superior person lets themselves be guided. They do not go ahead blindly, but learn from the situation what is demanded, and then follows this hint from fate. Since there is something to be accomplished, we need friends and helpers in our hour of toil and effort, once the ideas to be realized are firmly set. And the time of toil and effort is indicated by the west and the south, for west and south symbolize the place where where the receptive works for the creative. The southwest is the area of the receptive in feng shui. As nature does in summer and autumn, the receptive works on behalf of the creative. If in that situation one does not mobilize all one's forces, the work to be accomplished will not be done. Hence, to find friends, there means to find guidance. But in addition to the time of toil and effort, there is also a time of planning, and for this we need solitude. The east symbolizes a place where a person receives orders from their master, and the north, the place where they report on what they have done. At that time, they must be alone and objective. In this sacred hour, we must do without companions, so that the purity of the moment may not be spoiled by hate and favoritism. The image, the earth's condition is receptive devotion. Thus, a superior person who has breadth of character carries the outer world. Just as there is only one heaven, so too there is only one earth. In the hexagram of heaven, the doubling of the trigram implies duration and time, but in the hexagram of earth, the doubling means the solidity and extension in space, by virtue of which the earth is able to carry and preserve all things that live and move upon it. The earth, in its devotion, carries all things, good and evil, without exception. And in the same way, the superior person gives to their character breadth, purity, and sustaining power, so that they are able to support and to bear with people and things. The changing line 6 at the very beginning. When there is hoarfrost underfoot, solid ice is not far off. Hoarfrost is the first frost. Just as the light-giving power represents life, so the dark power, the shadowy, represents death. When the first hoarfrost comes in the autumn, the power of darkness and cold is just at its beginning. After these first warnings, signs of death will gradually multiply until, in obedience to unchangeable laws, stark winter with its ice is here. In life, it is the same. After certain scarcely noticeable signs of decay have appeared, they go on increasing until final dissolution comes. But in life, precautions can be taken by heeding and paying attention to the first signs of decay and checking them in time. So here in this changing line, mention is made about the ability of a person to pay attention to scarcely noticeable signs of decay that appear. And if they can do so, they can prepare for the decay that is to come by making choices in advance to ward off that problematic situation. And 6 at the top, dragons fight in the meadow. Their blood is black and yellow. In the top place, the dark element should yield to the light. If it attempts to maintain a position to which it is not entitled and to rule instead of serving, it draws down upon itself the anger of the strong. Here we have the interplay of feminine, yin, and masculine. So essentially this is saying the top line, which is the 6, which is a feminine line, if this energy doesn't shift and it tries to rule instead of serve, it draws anger down upon itself from the creative, which is the first hexagram, and this is the second hexagram. Together they are paired together. So a struggle ensues in which the receptive is overthrown with injury, however, to both sides. The dragon, a symbol of heaven, comes to fight the false dragon that symbolizes the inflation of the earth principle, the inflation or the exceeding measure of the earth principle, too much yin. Midnight blue is the color of heaven, yellow is the color of the earth. Therefore, when black and yellow blood flow, it is a sign that in this unnatural contest between the receptive and the creative, both primal powers suffer injury. And as a footnote, while the top line of the creative indicates titanic pride and forms a parallel to the Greek legend of Icarus, that's the first hexagram. Here in the second hexagram, the top line of the receptive presents a parallel to the myth of Lucifer's rebellion against God, or to the battle between the powers of darkness and the gods of Valhalla. So if we study this a little bit more, really the upshot of this is that the receptive is in a devoted position with the creative. They're complementary opposites. They help assisting one another. And in truth, the yin and yang theory is all based on these two hexagrams, the creative and the receptive, the primal yin power and the primal yang power, and creating a balance between these two powers such that one does not dominate the other and one does not become too excessive and the other too limited. So how this translates into letting your life be easier, the idea is to be receptive, to be devoted, and to allow yourself to be guided, to not try to lead. For the person that's described by this archetypal energy of the receptive is in a supportive position. The creative has to lead, and then it's productive of good. The creative leads the receptive. Essentially, the masculine or creative principle leads the feminine receptive principle. For when the receptive or the yin feminine tries to abandon this position and stands as an equal side by side with creative, it becomes evil. And then there's an opposition and a struggle that ensues between the creative and the receptive, and this produces evil consequences to both. So essentially the receptive is all about paying attention to how you're being guided, getting in tune with your higher guidance, asking for guidance, being receptive to subtle impressions and moving from those, letting yourself be guided essentially. The superior person lets themselves be guided. So this also talks about action that is in agreement with the situation that you find yourself in. So that's a very particular important point as well. The receptive must achieve something, and they are acting as an assistant. They're not in an independent position. So they don't plunge ahead blindly, but they learn from the situation what is truly demanded, and then they put this into effect. Solitude can be a very good thing in this process to help you get in tune with the messages that will help you move forward and be guided in the receptive archetypal energy. So time alone will help allow those messages and objective truths to come through, which will help your actions and your words and your thoughts be more in accordance with what the receptive is trying to guide you through and to. So if you notice through scarcely noticeable signs as you pay attention more and more fully to what's going on in your life, you can make precautions, you can take precautions, life precautions that can help you move away from decay. So these signs of decay that appear are guiding you that this is what's beginning to come in, just like the cold weather slowly seeps into the experience. So signs of decay too will have very slight indicators, but if you pay attention, you can make adjustments so that you don't go fully into the path of decay, but are able to check it in time and move in a more positive direction. This is another important point about how to make your life easier, how to let your life be easier. Maybe not put that into such an arduous verb as make it easier, but just allow or let it be easier as another way of thinking about it. And also the idea is that the superior person, man or woman, gives their character breadth, purity, and sustaining power. Essentially, they cultivate their inner character so that they're able to bear with difficult people, and they're able to offer support to people and to deal with situations and people that are challenging, and thereby preserve their life in a better way and not move into decaying type of situations. And finally, the dragons fighting in the meadow. This talks about the battle between the receptive, the feminine, and the creative, the masculine. For if this reiterates the idea, if the receptive tries to lead or rule instead of serving, it draws anger down upon itself from the strong creative, and a struggle ensues in which it is overthrown. But both sides, the feminine, the yin, and the masculine, are both injured because they are tied to one another. Their relationship is never ending. The dance and the balance between feminine and masculine, the yin and the yang, always is cultivating a healthy homeostasis in all different levels: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and in society as well. So if this type of a situation occurs, the dragon from heaven, the creative, has to fight the false dragon, or the feminine, which symbolizes an overinflation of the earth or feminine principle. So in this type of a situation, black and yellow blood flow, and this indicates that both the primal powers of feminine, the black, and masculine, feminine would be the yellow and the black would be the masculine. Anyway, these two primal powers are injured, and this is a result of the unnatural contest between the two, because the receptive did not yield to the light. It attempted to maintain a position of ruling to which it is not entitled. So this changing line at the top provides a cautionary tale in which, in order to allow or let your life be easier, it's important to let yourself be led and not try to rule, but allow the creative, the creative heaven, the masculine, to be in that ruling position. So gives a negative image in terms of a fight that ensues, and in order to let one's life be easier, both these primal powers have to be in their proper position for the balance to be maintained. And if the balance is maintained between these powers, then the life can be easier. When there is no balance, and when one power tries to occupy a position to which it's not entitled, then all sorts of chaos and problems result. And then, of course, one's life is not easier. So essentially, let yourself be guided, let yourself be led, and pay attention to those inner messages. Take time for contemplation, for listening, for meditation, to get in tune with that inner spiritual world that will help to guide you in how to proceed. Moving from the first hexagram to the second, the corners of the mouth providing nourishment, number 27. And this hexagram is a picture of an open mouth. There's two solid lines at the top and the bottom, and the broken lines in the center represent a mouth that's open. The top line and the bottom line represent the top and bottom lips, and between them the opening. Starting with the mouth, through which we take food for nourishment, the thought leads to nourishment in itself. Nourishment of oneself, especially of the body, is represented in the three lower lines, the trigram on the bottom, which is Chen, the arousing thunder, while the upper three lines, Ken, mountain, represent nourishment and the care of others in a higher spiritual sense. So here we have the image of a mountain on the top, which is nourishing and caring for others in a higher spiritual sense. The judgment, the corners of the mouth, perseverance brings good fortune. Pay attention to the providing of nourishment and to what a person seeks to fill their own mouth with. In bestowing care and nourishment, it is important that the right people should be taken care of, and that we should attend to our own nourishment in the right ways. And if we wish to know what anyone is like, we have only to observe on whom this person bestows their care, and what sides of their own nature they cultivate. And nourish. Nature nourishes all creatures. The great person fosters and takes care of superior people in order to take care of all beings through them. Mencius, the famed Chinese philosopher, says about this, if we wish to know whether anyone is superior or not, we need only observe that part of their being they regard as especially important. And the body has superior and inferior, and important and unimportant parts. We must not injure important parts for the sake of the unimportant, nor must we injure the superior parts for the sake of the inferior. A person who cultivates the inferior parts of their nature is an inferior person, and a person who cultivates the superior parts of their nature is a superior person. The image. At the foot of the mountain, thunder. So the top trigram is Ken, the mountain, the bottom is Chen, the arousing thunder. At the foot of the mountain, thunder. Thus the image of providing nourishment. Thus the superior man and woman are careful with their words, and they are temperate in eating and drinking, not extreme in their eating and drinking. God comes forth in the sign of the arousing, when in the spring the life forces begin to stir again, and all things come into being anew. The Creator brings to perfection in the sign of keeping still. Thus, in the early spring, when the seeds fall to earth, all things are made ready. This is an image of providing nourishment through movement and tranquility. The superior person takes it as a pattern for the nourishment and cultivation of their own character. Words are a movement that go from within outward, and eating and drinking are movements that go from outward inward, and both kinds of movements can be modified by tranquility. For tranquility keeps the words that come out of the mouth from going to an excessive measure, and tranquility keeps the food that goes into the mouth from exceeding its proper measure. Thus, character is cultivated. So here, in the idea of letting our lives be easier, we have the idea of the corners of the mouth providing nourishment. Here we have the idea of assessing what is it that truly nourishes us, not just our physical body, but our higher spiritual sense as well. The mountaintop perspective and also the earthly perspective. And if we can understand how we are nourished, specifically the body and the higher spiritual sense and the nourishment of others, then we can understand where we're coming from and where our character needs cultivation. So in helping us to let our lives be easier, this is important to pay attention to understanding what is it that provides nourishment, real nourishment for my whole being, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and so forth. And how do I provide nourishment to others? What is the process and what do I tend to do? Is there a way for me to fine-tune this? So in making or letting our lives be easier, we must pay attention to how we provide nourishment for ourselves and for others. And if there are ways that we can cultivate an improvement of this cultivation of nourishment and bestowing of nourishment, then we should do so. Because the great person always takes care of the superior parts and emphasizes the care of the superior parts rather than the inferior parts, and does not injure important parts of their being for unimportant parts. They cultivate the person who cultivates inferior parts of their nature tends to not rise up to the superior portion of themselves, rather stays in the inferior portions. And the person who cultivates the superior parts of their nature rises into the superior person that they are destined to be. And of course, rising into those superior portions of oneself allows the flow of energy to be much stronger. Events happen at a much better rate or flow, and new experiences occur that are more aligned with how you are living in terms of your attunement to your superior aspects rather than attunement to your inferior aspects, such as worry and fear and anger and retribution and so forth. You attend to the higher aspects: tranquility, peace, kindness, compassion, and trust. So we're encouraged to pay attention to our level of tranquility as well, the image of providing nourishment through movement and tranquility. And the cultivation of one's character is a concern of the superior person. And we have to pay attention to what we speak, because our words are a movement that either produces tranquility or produces a lack of tranquility, and therefore ill results. And if our words are in accordance with tranquility and with proper measure, then our lives will be easier. And if they're not, then our lives will be more difficult. Similarly, the food that we eat, if we are able to keep that in a moderate fashion, not eat too much, then the energy that goes into the mouth is not too excessive, and we're able to digest it, and then life experience follows suit, and life becomes easier. We don't want to tax the body with too much. Of course, we don't want to go the other direction either, and not nourish the body significantly enough with undernourishing it. So character is cultivated by maintaining a balanced approach in all these things: the words we speak, how we nourish ourselves with our food, and also how we nourish ourselves and others through our bestowing of care and spiritual assistance and loving kindness and support of others and ourselves. So everything in moderation really is the kind of synopsis of this second hexagram. Moderation and paying attention to where you derive nourishment and how you provide nourishment to others, and how you can attune yourself more fully to better forms of nourishment for yourself, and also better assistance of nourishment for others. And in doing so, paying attention to these things, you attune to higher energy frequencies, and these are more in tune with the universal energy flow, which of course then allows your life to be much easier. So that is what I have for you. I hope it helps. You might want to listen to it once again and jot down some of the most important ideas from this. And thanks for tuning in. Take care.